Today on TFL Bike, we are talking about our top 5 strange motorcycles. These are bikes throughout the history of two-wheeled riding with a motor that are a little weird.
Yeah, there's some really weird bikes on this list. Some that I've lusted after, some that I've never heard of before today, and Case kind of filled me in on. So let's just jump right in. Start with number 5. What's the number 5 weirdest bike on our list?
Yeah, number 5 is a bike that I personally lust after. This is the Honda Motocompo. These were produced between 1981 and 1983. And what it is a tiny little trunk bike, as they called it. These were designed to fit into the back of Japanese K cars like the Honda City Turbo. And they're really cool. They're less than 10 inches wide. They are, just tiny, and they're really retro.
Yeah, they're super cute and retro looking, and I would love to own one of these. They've got a little 49cc two-stroke motor, so you get some cool sounds and smells out of that.
3 cubic inches.
3 cubic inches, 2.5 horsepower, 2.7 pound-feet of torque, and the whole thing weighs 99 pounds. So I would love to have one of these, and you can stash it in the back of a K car.
Yeah, you could carry it under your arm. Honda made just over 53,000 units of these, so you can find them out there. They're expensive considering what they are, but it's cool. The handlebars and the seat fold into the bike, so it gets really compact. And again, they're just awesome to look at. So this is actually something I would love to own.
Yeah, me too. If you're looking for a conversation starter motorcycle, buy one of these. I guarantee you everybody everywhere will stop you and ask you about it. Even if they know about it, they'll probably just want to ask you what your experience has been like. So yeah, if you're looking for something super unique, go for the Motocompo, if you can find one.
Number 4 on this list is a very interesting bike called the Ronin 47. This is one that probably a lot of you have heard about because it's got a decent amount of press when they came out. They're pretty interesting. These were produced by Magpul, who makes firearm accessories. Their engineers took 47 Buell 1125s and used those as a basis to build a series of special bikes. And actually, their manufacturing was based out of Denver.
Yeah, they're right in our backyard, so how could you not love the Ronin? The Ronin makes 146 horsepower, weighs 425 pounds, and just has a crazy look to it. Looks like something, I don't know, maybe Batman would ride. It has a linkage front suspension, so no front forks. It's got a really weird way of connecting the front wheel to the rest of the bike. And that's really the talking point on the Ronin, is just the front end suspension.
Yeah, it's a crazy front end design, which is a big part of what makes it look different. Another thing that makes this bike somewhat strange is just the story around it. So the Ronin motorcycle company just set out to build these 47 bikes, and it's 47 Roman, named after a Japanese legend about samurais. I haven't actually read it, so I don't know the details of that. But each one of the 47 Ronin bikes was given a name and a number that corresponded to one of those legendary Japanese samurais. So now that they've built all 47 of those bikes, production is over. They're not going to build any more of them. They range from $38,000 to $50,000. And I've actually seen one in person. There's this really cool motorcycle magazine based in Denver called Meta, and they had one in their shop space that I got to take some pictures of, walk around. Didn't get to ride it, but it's love it or hate it. It's a striking thing to look at.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw this, I remember just staring at my computer screen for a while and just kind of diving into how everything would work. It's really funky. I'd love to ride one of these. Probably not going to happen.
Yeah, fat chance. There's only 47 of them.
47 of them, and they cost a fortune. So if you bought one, you probably guard it like it's your baby. But really cool piece of machinery to look at.
Number 3 on this list is the Yamaha Niken GT, which is a weird motorcycle for very obvious reasons. It's got 3 wheels.
Yeah, this is a bike that is probably the newest one on this list. Hasn't been around all that long, and this is a bike you can actually go buy in a dealership for, not $50,000. It's a regular average Joe motorcycle is what I'm trying to say. But it does have some crazy aspects to it. So 2 front wheels, but you don't ride it like a trike or a Can-Am. where you're like steering. It still leans, it still counter steers, and you just have another wheel there for stability. And actually, a couple months ago when I went and reviewed the new Yamaha R7, the camera crew that was there helping us get some of the B-roll footage you guys saw in that video had one of these Nikens with a camera crane on the front of it. It was a really cool setup. I'm a video nerd myself, so that was super cool. And there's just a lot you can do with a three-wheeled motorcycle in terms of using it for video production, but also just looks like it's a blast to ride and super unique.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people would have a hard time grasping and appreciating is just the amount of contact patch on the front end. By all accounts, I've not ridden one of these, but what's crazy about this motorcycle, especially in adverse weather conditions, is the amount of grip that it has. They can really lean, and they're surprisingly high performance. Not in the least bit because it's got a CP3 850cc, 115 horsepower Yamaha engine. So pretty sporty, which is a good thing because it does weigh 580 pounds, which is on the heavy side. Surprisingly, even though it's got basically two front ends, only weighs like 20 pounds more than my Sportster. Which makes me feel a little bad.
One of the craziest parts of this bike is the front forks, and you actually did some research into this. There's 4 front fork tubes on this bike, but only 2 of them actually have springs inside.
Yeah, so in the rear there's 43 millimeter forks, and in the front 41 millimeter forks. But those front tubes are just for alignment and stability. So it's not actual suspension, it's just got lubrication inside of them. And then in between the two sides of the front end, there's this crazy parallelogram linkage that lets the two parts of it lean independently. It's a weird design, but again, by all accounts, it works really well.
Yeah, like we've said, neither of us have ridden one of these bikes, but this is a more realistic one that hopefully we could get some seat time on. It comes in at $17,300, and pretty funny, Case found out that if you Google this bike, the first question is what?
Yeah, the first question that pops up when I Googled the Yamaha Niken to pull some facts about it was, what is the point of the Yamaha Niken?
And I think that's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually haven't ever seen one of these out on the road besides on like a demo ride or something like that. So they're not selling too well. And I really think the whole reason it exists is just for Yamaha to show off what they're capable of.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
I think it's dreadfully ugly. As is the next bike on the list, actually. Number 2, the BMW C1. This isn't even a motorcycle, it's a moped.
It's a moped, it's kind of a car, maybe a motorcycle, who knows. The reason I say it's kind of a car is because this motorcycle, or moped, has a roof and a seatbelt inside. Only was available from 2000 to 2002 for obvious reasons. Didn't sell too well, people weren't super stoked on the roof, seatbelt, and motorcycle combo. But
imagine that.
There you have it.
Yeah, there was one version of this that had a 124cc 4-stroke motor with 15 horsepower, and then the big version of it was 176 cc's with 18 horsepower.
Yeah, this is it's an ugly bike. You'll get some comments on it, but I don't know that they're going to come in the best way possible.
Yeah.
It's weird. This is just way out there, so weird.
It's also got a CVT, and it weighs over 400 pounds. Over 400 pounds with, at best, 18 horsepower.
Yeah, I've never seen one of these in person.
They didn't sell them in the US.
They didn't sell them here.
And we don't spend a lot of time abroad,
Yeah. But I would be curious to take a ride on one of these. I've never owned one. But
like riding something with 2 wheels, having a seatbelt on and a roof over your head. The idea was that it was supposed to be safer, but I don't know. Some of these even had seats on the back of them outside of the bubble, which seems, it's a weird thing to look at. So I'm kind of glad they didn't sell these in the US.
Yeah, it's weird. And I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is safety. It's, you know, it's a moped, so they don't have to put it through crash testing or anything. You're also strapped into this vehicle, so if you do get in an accident, you're not going anywhere. Yeah, you just kind of sit there and brace for it. And I love wearing riding gear when I'm riding, but something like this would be pretty tempting to hop in, no helmet, flip-flops, shorts, t-shirt, and just take off. So definitely a little bit of a death machine, but
seems like it.
Seems like it. Never ridden one, so can't speak on experience, but definitely an ugly and weird bike.
So that certainly qualifies as weird. And then the number 1 motorcycle on this list, I have seen in person before at a museum at Barber Motorsports Complex. I learned a little bit about it then, but didn't really research it much until today. And this is one of my new favorite motorcycles. This is an older bike, which is more the kind of thing that I'm into. So this is actually a bike Alex hasn't heard of, and I have refused to let him research it until right now because I'm excited to tell you about it. This is a motorcycle that's on the screen behind him. It's the 1992 Honda NR750. So here's the story. Basically, the NR750 is based on what was apparently a really terrible racing bike from Honda, and what was crazy about it is that it had oval pistons. So we'll get into that in a second, but it was made for the 1979 World Motorcycle Grand Prix 500 class, and the rule was you couldn't have more than 4 cylinders. So Honda basically made a V8, but it was only technically 4 cylinders because these oval pistons were conjoined. So it had 2 connecting rods, 8 valves per cylinder, 2 spark plugs, and 2 fuel injectors.
Pretty genius.
Yeah,
I like it.
Actually, what's kind of cool about it is that because it's one oval piston instead of many round pistons, there's less surface area and less friction. So it actually, at least later on when they made a street legal version of it, ended up being a pretty cool motor. This race bike that they made in the late 70s was terrible. Apparently this race bike suffered from sudden disintegration when it revved to over 10,000 RPM. It was supposed to be capable of revving, up to 23,000 RPM, but it just couldn't because the connecting rods would distort and fly apart. It did manage to make 130 to 135 horsepower in those old race bikes, which is pretty impressive, but they only ever won 2 races for Honda, so not great. But about 14 years later, they made 322 examples of a street legal bike called the NR750 that used a similar engine design. And that's this bike here. Over those 14 years, they managed to actually make this engine design work pretty well. And this bike, the street legal version, made 125 horsepower at 14,000 RPMs and a top speed of 160 miles per hour. Now, 125 horsepower from a 750, horsepower per liter, that is roundabout equivalent to what a brand new CBR 1000 RR makes. A couple other crazy things about it. So, had a 6-speed transmission for the time, that's pretty good. Also a digital dash, which is also pretty good. It had an 8-4-2-1-2 exhaust that exits under the seat in a really cool fashion, which Ducati kind of recreated on the 916. They also definitely recreated the headlight design that's on this. The headlights on this in 1992 look exactly like the headlights on the 916 that came out 2 years later. It's also got carbon fiber bodywork, and these were $50,000 brand new, so good luck finding one now. There's only 322 of them, period.
Yeah, pretty cool motorcycle. Like Case said, I knew nothing about it, and I didn't even have to butt in. He's so stoked on it, he just talked for like 4 minutes about the same bike. So
Is that not the most insane thing that you've ever seen or heard? Oval pistons, 2 connecting rods, 32 valve 4-cylinder.
It is really weird. I mean, oval to have an oval piston. And it's just genius. They're cheating a V8 into a 4-cylinder bike. It's awesome. How could you not appreciate that? And the design too. It's just super cool to look at. It's got these like braces that extend from the tank up to the top of the windscreen. Yeah, it's pretty. I like it. And I just think it's genius. That's just so cool. I legitimately didn't know why they made these oval pistons before we sat down here. Case just told me live. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, think about that. I mean, again, like you said, to make a V8 into a 4-cylinder engine, to have 8 valves per cylinder, 2 connecting rods, 14,000 RPM is peak power, revs up to 15,000 RPM, fully adjustable suspension. In 1992, carbon fiber body, digital dash, that's so cool.
Yeah. So did they ban this? Is that why, were they not allowed to keep racing it? Do you know?
No, I think they didn't keep racing the NR500 that came out before that this motor was based on because it was terrible.
Okay.
And it
just kept
flying
apart and they didn't want to redevelop it.
Yeah, they were trying to compete with the 2-strokes while using a 4-stroke, and it just didn't work. So they made the NS, which was a 2-stroke, and that was the race bike after. But I don't know why, actually, they decided 14 years later to make 322 street-legal bikes with that engine design after it failed them so horribly. But I'm really glad they did, because this is just one of the coolest little random tidbits in motorcycle history. And just a plug for people who are interested in motorcycles, I saw one of these at the museum, the motorcycle museum at Barber Motorsports Complex in Auburn. So if you're ever around there, go check out this bike. There's one of them on display, which is really cool.
I haven't been to this museum, but Case showed me some pictures, and it looks
It's
like
insane.
you can spend a whole week there.
I also saw a couple Motocompos at the Barber Small Bore event that was going on.
Give it enough time, and probably all 5 of these bikes on this list will make it into that museum at some point.
Yeah, they're all pretty unique.
Probably pretty fair to say. To be honest, if we did this video 4 or 5 times, we could probably come up with a different list every single time. So
yeah.
I'm sure there's some bikes that you guys would have liked to see on this list that probably deserve to be on this list. So if you have any crazy, weird motorcycles, doesn't matter how old they were, how new they are, let us know down in the comments below. We'd love to hear them, and maybe we'll do version 2 of this video.
Yeah, because especially back in the day, like in the teens and in the 20s when motorcycles were becoming popularized, there were tons of crazy designs that were just out there, people testing it out to see if it would work. So yeah, drop us some comments down below. We can always make another one of these videos researching some cool bikes, because this is pretty fun.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.